Ruden Report podcast is brought to you by the Westport Library. Welcome to the Ruden Report podcast. I'm Dave Ruden, coming to you live here from the Verso Studios at the Westport Library. I think the subject today is FCIAC baseball. Believe it or not, spring sports go by, I think, faster than any season. It seems like I was writing previews a week ago, and now I'm talking about a week from Friday, the first playoff games. And it's a battle for positioning right now, and it's kind of an interesting dynamic between the end of last week and the next 2 days. And we have the top four teams in the standings facing off against each other. And right now, I think their biggest task is making sure they end up being the top four teams in the standings as we have a new playoff system, but home team advantage through the quarterfinals. So obviously, getting there is going to be important. Joining me, I have my sidekick. We haven't seen him for 2 weeks because we got busy last week, but Ian Nicholas is with me. Ian, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Dave. Ready to talk some baseball, and we're towards the end of a regular season. Ready to talk about some of the top four teams in the league and really who the true contenders look like right now at this point in the year.
Yep, it's an interesting. We're taping this now Monday, earlier today, and by late tomorrow afternoon, things could look a lot different. But as we tape this right now, we've got Fairfield Ward in first place with a 10-1 record. And they are followed by Greenwich and Trumbull, a game behind at 9-2, and a game and a half behind is Staples at 9-3. And those four teams are engaged in a round robin. We're coming off Saturday, the FCIAC game of the year. It was postponed 2 days, and it seemed like the game went on for 2 days. But we had Greenwich pulling out a 7-6, 11-inning win on safety squeeze, and actually I in the intro here I forgot to include that we have coming up. I talked to Greenwich coach Adrian Arango, and he'll be coming up shortly. Anyhow, that was the game of the year to date. 11 innings, 7-6. I think Adrian Arango is now known as Mr. Safety Squeeze, as Greenwich in the bottom of the seventh inning, safety squeezed the tying run in, and in the 11th, safety squeezed the winning run. So we'll have more with Adrian coming up in a little bit, talking about that game and the Cardinals. So, and now as we're getting ready, I'm here and I'm driving back to Fairfield after we record this to go see Ward play Staples, as Ward is inching closer to locking up the top seed. And then tomorrow, a game that's been postponed from today, we've got Greenwich and Trumbull coming up. So Greenwich gets to go right from Staples to Trumbull, and Staples gets to go from Greenwich to Ward. So, Ian, that's the way the top four teams are looking right now.
Yeah, they really are. And Dave, I think a big storyline this week was going to be the Greenwich Cardinals, because we knew that they had talent. It was just a question of, would they be able to truly compete with the first-year head coach and Adrian Arango with the top teams in the league? And they proved over the weekend that they can, and hopefully they can do the same tomorrow with Arango's young and super talented squad. I think you'd agree they have a really superstar hitting, and they can compete with the top teams in the league. So why don't you bring us through a little bit of a preview of what tomorrow's game for Greenwich is going to look like and their chances on the road?
I haven't looked to see how the pitching's lined up. When I talked to Adrian, I didn't even ask him about pitching, but I know Miles Langhorne's been their number one, and he's only thrown 11 innings, and I don't want to steal too much from the conversation that Adrian and I have, but they've got a lot of pitching depth, and that's why they're sitting where they are. And the one thing that's going to be kind of cool is I don't know who the top four pitchers are in the league, but you can certainly make a case right now that Ward, Greenwich, Trumbull, and Staples, their number ones, are the top four. I wonder if because Ward has such quality starting pitching, I'm guessing Brett Connor would say that Zach Broderick's is number one. Greenwich, you have Langhorne. Trumbull, you've got Brian Krause, who's shut down everybody except for except for Staples so far this year. He's coming off an impressive win over Ridgefield. And then Staples, you got Carter Kelsey. So you've got 4 really good number ones, and then right behind. Let's not forget Norwalk and Ridgefield are sitting there at 7 and 4, both really solid teams. Now Ridgefield's already beaten Greenwich and Staples, and every time it looks like they're going to make a run at being one of the top 4 teams, they get a really good win, and then they get a setback. But they're a threat there, and then we got 5 teams with 5 losses. So. The other thing that's going to be interesting, Ian, I'm not sure if you noticed this or not, but much like what they did in the wintertime, we're going to have every team in the FCIAC tournament this year. So instead of 3, we're going to have 4 rounds, and that's going to change the dynamic a lot in terms of how teams prepare for the playoffs.
The FCIAC for baseball this year is so deep. We see so many teams that are capable of winning big-time games. Maybe not more than 4 big-time contenders, but you mentioned that there are 5 other teams with 5 losses, which is not a lot at this state in the season. And you mentioned it, Norwalk and Ridgefield, even though they aren't one of the big 4 right now in the conversation, those 2 are going to have spots in the tournament. They're going to play some lower-level teams to start in their first rounds, and they're going to be dangerous teams because Norwalk and Ridgefield, they've already proven to be teams that can win the big game. So what are your opinions on the expanded playoff format for the FCIAC baseball spring season and getting all the teams involved? Are you a fan of a deeper pool that could potentially provide some big-time upsets?
And just to backtrack on your point 1 second, Norwalk and Ridgefield do have one thing in common. They've both beaten Staples. I don't know if I'm a fan of it or not. The part I like about it is the more games you have to win, the better the chances you're going to have a truer champion. I don't like baseball's. I beat this point home, but I think everybody does. Baseball's not a single elimination sport. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times the best team doesn't win because you could be the number 8 seed in what would be a traditional year where the 8th seed would be the last team getting in. And you could have the best pitcher in the state and nothing else, nobody else on the team, but you've gotten to the 8th spot because of that pitcher, and he's going to probably, or has a good chance of shutting down the number 1 team in the first game. So, excuse me. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It's going to change dynamics a little bit. The one thing, and actually before we came here for a story I'm doing, Ian, I was just talking to your coach at New Canaan, Anthony Bloss, and I talked to him because they're one of the teams that right now are sitting around the 7, 8, 9 seed. And I asked him if this were a normal year, would you be coaching differently? And he said, in a normal situation, seeing where things are next week, the last game or 2, he might be coaching. He might be forced to alter his pitching rotation just to make sure he gets in the tournament.
Big-time implications for teams in this playoff tournament. The expanded tournament coaches are going to have to be at their best and on their toes, just like Coach Bloss mentioned. There is a bit of, a bit of reassurance that you do have that game on Friday for every single team involved, which could provide upsets and does give teams motivation to continue to try to get better and better towards the end of the season as they know they'll get a spot in the tournament. So it's going to be interesting, and I think it's a really fun experiment. And as you mentioned, baseball, not necessarily the sport where one and done is the best, but I think it, just like it proved for basketball in the winter, I think it will be fun, and I think a little bit of chaos could ensue, and who doesn't love a little chaos come tournament time? So, you've got a lot of big games to cover the rest of this week, though, Dave, right? Not only just today, Monday and Tuesday, but the back end of the week should be a big one for you as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to – Wednesday's rivalry day, and right now we'll see what happens, the results today, but I have a feeling I'm going to end up I want to make a trip. I haven't seen McMahon yet this year, so I've only seen Norwalk once, so I think I'm going to head over there, and Norwalk Ridgefield play each other to end the week, so that's going to be a big game for the standings as well. Staples loses to Ward. They've got 4 losses. And Norwalk and Ridgefield are sitting there right now with 4 losses and a tiebreaker advantage. So, Staples doesn't want to fall out of the top 4 spot. Nobody does, because you'll have home field advantage through the quarterfinals. But the more I think about this, having everybody in there, I think, is going to increase the chances of better teams winning. It's going to really tax the depth of these teams that are going to end up finishing in the 6 through 11 spots. So we've got an interesting playoff race shaping up here. The playoffs are going to be great. They always are in baseball. And one of the teams that's going to be involved is Greenwich. And when we come back, my conversation with Cardinals coach Adrian Arango. We're back, and as we're getting ready for a new week of baseball, we're still coming off what was probably the most dramatic game of the year on Saturday, the big matchup between Greenwich and Staples, 2 teams that are battling for high seeds, came into the game tied, and Greenwich came away with a really hard-fought 7-6, 11-inning win, 4 hours and 20 minutes. And joining me right now, I think we're going to call him Mr. Safety Squeeze. That might be his new nickname in his first head coaching job, is Greenwich coach Adrian Arango. Adrian, thanks a lot for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me, Dave. I really appreciate it. And thanks again for having me on.
No, this will be fun. We go back a long time. Let's first, coming off yesterday, we're taping this. It's not even 24 hours yet. Have you recovered?
Yeah, barely. It's been, I got home last night and I had, so many text messages from different coaches in the league and friends and old coaches that I coach with, and everybody wanted to know what happened and, couldn't believe how the game ended. And it was 11 innings. They were going to call the game to darkness depending on what happened that inning. So we would have had to pick up the game at another time, which would have been crazy. So it's been quite a 24 hours. I'm, really excited to get the win, obviously. But what a game, just a great high school baseball game. That's really what it comes down to.
When you're playing a game like that, I mean, obviously it's a little different because it's Saturday, which you don't normally play on. It started mid-afternoon, so the game went really late. Is it a little different coming down off a game from that than maybe a regular Monday, Wednesday, Friday game?
No question about it. I told the kids to enjoy their day today and certainly enjoy their day with their mothers and thank them for all that they do for them. And, playing a Saturday game like that, starting so late, because there was SATs, we had to start the game late in the afternoon. So I believe some kids on Staples had SATs. So the game was actually, we got rained out Wednesday. I know you were supposed to cover it. Thursday was 65 and sunny, and everybody's saying, how come they didn't play? We had puddles in our outfield, literal puddles. So it just wasn't a game that we could play that day. So I kind of felt bad because I would have liked to have played it on Thursday. So it got moved to Saturday, but it definitely throws off the routine. But just coming off that kind of game and coming, no team deserved to lose yesterday. And, coming off a win actually, propels us into what's going to be a tough week this week as well.
The reason I said we're going to call you Mr. Safety Squeeze, kind of, and it goes beyond what was most apparent to anybody who read up on the game. But you won the game on the bottom of the 11th on a Jack Zola safety squeeze. But you also tied the game in the bottom of the 7th on a safety squeeze as well. So why don't you take me through both instances and why you made the calls that you did?
Yeah, so it's funny. Normally the head coach is the third base coach, but something I learned from one of my big mentors, Danny Melzer, is you want your coaches as involved as possible. Your assistant coaches have to be an extension of you, and they have to have input. So Pat Murphy is my normal third base coach. He normally hits infield, outfield, and I concentrate. I call the pitches, and I do bullpens and those sorts of things. So it's kind of more of a different role. But he wasn't there yesterday. He had a family commitment. So it was my first time coaching third in a long time. I've been an assistant a lot. I haven't been a head coach a ton. So it was interesting that being in that spot of coaching third base. And I just felt like, it's something we talked about last week. We hadn't even put in a squeeze play the first week of the season. And then I talked to the coaches and said, we have to have that available to us in the event we need it. And, yesterday we had a 2-run lead going into the 7th. They took the lead on us, typical, Staples, never say die, fight attitude. So we're down a run. I got a guy at the plate that I know if I need him to put something down, he can. And, I said, you know what? I'm not going to take any chances. Their pitchers did a good job. They threw a bunch of arms at us yesterday. And it was just kind of a gut feeling. I was like, you know what? I got the right guy at the plate in Justin Zeich. We got the right guy at third base who I know can get home for us. And we put it on and it was executed perfectly. And it was just kind of one of those spurred things like we're going to do it. I want to make sure we live to see another day here. So, and then in the 11th, we were going to do it again in the 10th. Obviously Staples was more prepared for it. We had bases loaded, no outs, and we didn't end up scoring. And with 1 out, I was going to do it again. I kind of decided it wasn't, they were all kind of all over it. They had moved the corners in real far. And then the 11th, I told Jack, they had made a pitching change, Jack Zola. And I said, listen, I'm going to give you one shot. If they get a strike on you, I want you to put it down. So we rolled the dice and it worked out. I mean, they're both bunts were perfectly executed in places where there wasn't really going to be a play at the plate. So
kind of interesting. You don't necessarily get this in baseball as much, and it doesn't stand out as much in baseball because you play so many times a week. But I was kind of thinking about this yesterday that, if this was like a football game and everybody was getting hyped about, the two teams that were tied for second place in the league, and you're playing a game like this, and if it was football, it would have ended up being like a 35-28 overtime game or something like that. And you get a baseball game with again, two of the best teams in the state, and it really lived up to the hype, and unfortunately maybe got lost a little bit because Saturday's such a big lacrosse day with so many of the best teams in the FCIAC and state playing each other.
Absolutely. And we had a good crowd for the game. Our lacrosse kids were at the game towards the end. The game went so long that they got back from their game and we had a bunch of them on the fence there, and some playful banter and things like that. And it kind of felt like a high school atmosphere. I was at McMahon Stanford the other night at Cubetta Stadium, and Stanford High had a little student section there. And it felt good, after losing last season, you're almost getting that sense of some normalcy coming back to sports and high school sports. And that's a big part of high school sports, the fan engagement, the high schools, all those fan sections. And it was high drama, definitely high drama. And it was good. We ended up on top, considering we lost kind of a heartbreaker earlier in the week to Richfield, and it would have been probably tough to lose another game like that. But the boys really battle. I'm really proud of them.
So we're sitting here right now. You're getting ready on Monday to you don't get a break. You got to come off this game and play Trumbull, but and you're tied with Trumbull right now. You went into yesterday tied with Staples or tied in the loss column with Staples. You're a half game ahead. So as we go into the start of the week, we got Fairfield Ward, which actually plays Staples at 10-1. You and Trumbull at 9-2, and then the Wreckers at 9-3. You have to be real happy. You're certainly not a surprise team. We knew you had a lot of talent. Where that was going to carry you and where it still may carry you remains to be seen, but you have to be real happy about how the season's gone so far.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Tomorrow's one of those big Mondays in the FCIAC, and two big games. I got a lot of respect for Trumbull from back when even I played. They've always been a perennial state power. Phil does a tremendous job there, and when you play Trumbull, you better be ready to go. And can't say enough about the what Ward's doing this year and the numbers they're putting up. But yeah, I agree with 100% you said, and certainly we weren't overlooked preseason. Teams knew that, coaches knew we had some talent. But I'm just impressed with the work ethic of the boys. Some of the names you hear, people may have not even heard of before. It's tough in Greenwich. It's a big high school. You got 2,900 kids. Sometimes in the summer, a lot of kids play Legion or travel, and some of these kids didn't even play Senior Legion yet. They're Junior Legion players who had the ability to probably be Senior Legion players in other towns in the state, but Greenwich has such a good Legion program like Stanford and Trumbull and those programs, and the kids have just done a tremendous job. I mean, this is. I've been very fortunate in all the years I've coached. I've had so many good groups of kids. I can't ever say I really even had a bad experience. this group, I mean, I know it's my first group, technically my second group, but first group on the field, and they're just a special group of kids. I mean, I can't say enough about. I could go through each one. There's 20 of them, so that would take forever. But I could go through each one and say something special about them. And they're a tight knit group. We have great captains. We have a lot of seniors, and a lot of times that's a recipe for success. You know, I've been on other teams in similar situations where you have good senior leadership, guys who can keep the team together, captains who are an extension of the coaching staff, and I'm blessed to have all of that. So. It's been fun so far. You know, we set big goals before the season, and you know, we're just hoping to continue to play good baseball and give ourselves a chance.
You talk about the players, and this is a deep roster, and you have a lot of arms. Obviously, when people talk Greenwich baseball, the first person they talk about is Miles Langhorne. Not a lot of times we see players from this area going down to play at Vanderbilt, and he helps even when he's not on the mound. He was 3 for 6 yesterday on a day he didn't pitch. Yeah,
he's Miles has been everything that's advertised. You know, he's first and foremost, he's a team guy first. He told me before the season, you know, when he was named the captain, Coach, I want to win this year. That's the most important thing. And that's spoken true. Everything he said, everything he's done has been about the team. You know, he was unfortunately stuck in the quarantine situation. He had a little oblique injury in the preseason, so he didn't play in any of the scrimmages. And then he was part of the quarantine by no fault of his own. And so he got a late start with everything. So he's only pitched 11 innings. Which isn't the worst thing because it's given him some time to recover. And, you know, obviously we don't want to rush him back. But he's been able to do damage at the plate and just be a good leader in general. And he's just a good kid. You know, he's a good kid. He loves his teammates. He treats everyone equally. And the guys look up to him naturally. You know, when you have a kid who's committed to Vanderbilt and can possibly go in the first 5 rounds of the draft, you know, and at the same time, he's handled it like not many 17-year-olds can. He just turned 18 last week. And, you know, listen, there's pressure. I don't think anyone can relate. I know certainly I can't. I don't really know anyone who can relate to this sort of situation. And he's done a good job of kind of taking it all in and, you know, taking it one game at a time and just being a good, consistent leader for us.
It says something about your entire pitching staff that he's gone 11 innings and you're sitting here at 9-2 right now. I think a lot of people would have said, you know, would have thought differently based on what they read back at the end of March. But you got, you know, Nathan Jones. You have a lot of good arms on your team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think that's the biggest thing. You know, I think a lot of people said, "Oh, Miles Langhorne." And I don't even think Miles likes to hear that because he knows we're a good team. We're deep. You know, we have a lot of hard workers. You know, getting back to Miles really quick, I haven't met a player who's worked that hard at his craft ever in any sport. I mean, this kid has a daily plan, daily routine that he does. Meanwhile, the rest of our guys on our staff are just overlooked. Carson Bilshoe is, you know, leading ERA. He has under a 1 ERA. He's had 3 great starts for us. He's a competitor.
And he went the first 5 innings yesterday. Got forgotten about because you ended up playing another almost full game. But
right,
sorry to interrupt, but he had a big game yesterday.
He did, and you know he threw 4 shutout against McMahon, 5 innings against West Hill, gave up 1 run, actually 1 unearned or 2 unearned, and then gave up 1 earned yesterday. So he's only given up 1 earned run in 14 innings this year. And you know he's a bulldog out there. And Carson gets overlooked, but Carson on most staffs would probably be their ace. And I've had other coaches tell me that, like, very impressed with him. And not a lot of people knew about Carson. You know, he would have pitched last year for us as a junior, but this was kind of his first entry. And then Jonesy, you know, our sophomore, you know, people are going to be reading about him for the next 3 years. He's only going to get better. I'm so impressed with his composure, his stuff. He's got great stuff for a sophomore. He's not even done growing yet. And we have really high hopes for him. You know, he's going to be the anchor of our staff going forward, you know, after this year. And Tommy Healy the other day, who, once again, another kid who people might not be aware of, you know, he took a no-hitter into the 7th against a good hitting New Canaan team. So, you know, Tommy pitched against Ludlow early in the year, had a couple of relief appearances. You know, he came in against Richfield the other day, had a little bit of tough luck. So, and it's not just those guys. We have a bunch of seniors, guys yesterday, you know, John McGrath, Michael Rose, Matt Chiadidi. these are guys that, they're seniors, and when they get out there, I feel very confident with them out there. They may not get as many innings, they may not get starts, but they're as big a part of the team as anybody else is. So very happy with where our pitching is and the way our guys go out and compete and throw strikes.
What was it like? You're in an interesting situation in that you got hired for the job in the winter of 2019. So last year would have been your first season with the team, and you've got the pandemic. So what do you do as a first year coach when you've got a canceled season? You're trying to learn your team, trying to, let the team know more about you. And then you come in this year, and they only kind of know you from what you did during quarantine. So how's that dynamic worked? How you handled last year and how you handled the start of this year?
That's a great question. Last year, I still think about those guys all the time. I know, Coach McFarland you had on earlier in the year, and other coaches have said, this season's dedicated to those guys. Those guys gave me everything they had. We didn't even set foot on a field. And those guys, my captains, Christian Arrow, Hunter Grunstrass, and Jake Monshine, along with like Ryan Perez's brother, Dan Perez, and all the other seniors too from last year. That would have been I think we had a really good group last year. And it was tough. We never got our opportunity. I couldn't imagine being a senior and losing my senior year of baseball. I don't know how I would have reacted to that. So they were just such classy, good kids. Toph, Christian Arrow's doing a great job at Fordham. He's starting at shortstop now for them as a freshman. So couldn't be prouder of that group. In terms of getting to know this group, to be honest, my experience of just coaching has helped me because I went against a lot of these guys for years, coaching Stanford Legion in the summer. I was a junior pitching coach under Tim Daly, and I got to play against a bunch of these guys. And I remember saying I played 3 summers ago when these kids were freshmen. We played against Greenwich's B team, which I laughed because it wasn't a B team. They had AJ Barber, Carson, Zach Alza, Augie Bancroft, all these kids that I have now. And I was like, these kids are freshmen. I'm like, man, Greenwich is going to have quite a golden age of baseball coming up. And little did I know, 3 years later, I'd be head coach at the high school, which I would have never thought in a million years would have happened, especially, with Mike being there. So it's been a seamless transition. They've made it easy for me. They've been very accepting. I've gotten a lot of good advice and mentorship from other guys. Phil Tarantino, who was the coach at Greenwich High for a few years, in between the 2 Mike Morris stints, he's been a huge help to me in terms of just guidance and talking FCIAC baseball with him. And, I got a bunch of guys I can do that with, luckily, but I can't thank Phil enough for everything he's done. And, I went over the summer, I watched these guys play, and that was kind of all I could do. I couldn't really talk to them. We couldn't do any team workouts. All I know is over the winter, these kids went out on their own and they all dedicated themselves to baseball. And, whether it was at Bobby Valentine's or the YWCA in Greenwich, and they did it on their own, and in groups, small groups, because of COVID, they couldn't even work out together. So, they were doing a lot of stuff by themselves. Kids were hitting off tees. Just a hardworking, great group of kids. And that's why I'm just very proud of them in general.
You've kind of been, I go back with you to my Stanford Advocate days when you pitched at Stanford High School and Summer League Baseball. So I certainly remember Adrian Arango, the player. And since that time, I don't know if I want to date myself. You're still young, but we're going back 20 years since you were a player. But you've been an assistant in a lot of places, Stanford High, New Canaan, amongst others with baseball, New Canaan and Ludlow with boys basketball. Before Greenwich, had you interviewed for many head coaching baseball jobs?
No, I haven't interviewed for any. I was content with where I was at. I made a late career switch to teaching. I started teaching about 10 years ago. I had a whole other job before that, and something was missing. I coached Little League Baseball for 10 years as just a volunteer. My boss at the time had a son in Stanford Little League Baseball, and he looked at my resume and he said, "You played a little baseball, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like baseball." So he got me to come along and coach Little League with him. So I did that for 10 years, and then it just gave me the itch to get out there. I mean, Little League is great, and I love doing it. Mike Scarlett at Richfield, he still does it. He still does Little League. I remember coaching against him. But now he's got the high school and Little League. I don't know how he does it. Cause I've had to cut back, taking over the job here. But I just remember telling myself, like, it's time, and the way to do that, I always wanted to teach. I just felt like maybe at 21, I wasn't ready to. And I made the switch, and it's been the best decision I ever made. It's given me the opportunity to go coach kids in high school at various levels and various sports. And it's just been great. And in terms of the guys I've coached with, if it wasn't for the guys I've coached under as being an assistant, I wouldn't be here today. There's no way I'd still be an assistant. I've learned so much. I could go through each guy and tell you one or two things that they gave to me that helped me say one day when I'm going to do this, when I want to be a head coach, these are the things I'm going to need to do. And to be honest, I was going to wait a few more years to start, going on the circuit to try to get a head job. But I got some people who reached out to me when the Greenwich job opened and said, "Hey, why don't you go for it? You've been an assistant, you've proven yourself. What could hurt? You go for the job, you don't get it." And I said, "You know what? Let me see what happens." And I feel very honored to get a job at such a great high school, with so many great coaches before me. So
that Greenwich is a plum coaching job in almost any sport, baseball in particular. I was kind of curious, and that's why I asked if you had interviewed anywhere before. You go in and you've got a strong resume, but you don't have any head coaching experience, which I guess an administrator that might be the one yellow light there. When you went and met with Gus Lundeen, what did you tell him why Adrian Arango should be the Greenwich baseball coach?
Well, I just drew a lot of my experiences. I've been an FCIAC guy my whole life. I played in the league. I know a lot about the history. I could think back to games I played. When I was at Stanford High. When I talked to Timmy Egan at Willen every year, even when I was assistant, Timmy, you remember when you ruined our perfect regular season? My junior year went 19-1, and he remembers the pitcher, that beat us 2-1 that day. I didn't even remember the pitcher. So it's always great seeing him. He's, when we played them this year, I got there a little early because I wanted to talk to him, and the stories and the stuff he told me from his 42 years. What an incredible.
Tim's one of the best storytellers in the FCIAC.
Unbelievable. It was just, I want, the game was about to start. I'm like, I kind of want to keep talking, maybe we can delay the game a little bit, he's such a good guy too. And been so complimentary of me and anything you need. I mean, a lot of the coaches have done that, but to be honest, I want to thank guys in particular. These are all guys, all guys who've been successful. It started with John Daly at Fairfield Ludlow, who's a tremendous basketball coach. I consider one of the best coaches in the league. John kind of got me my start. He took me on as an assistant. We had some successful years together. And then just because of proximity of being closer to Stanford, when Danny moved over from Stanford to New Canaan, Danny Melzer, I went over with him. And, I learned my lion's share of being a head coach from Danny. Danny's preparation, Danny's ability to give work to his assistants and have his assistants be an integral part of the program and feel like they're contributing just as much as he is. And I always told myself, if I ever become a head coach, my assistants are going to have huge roles because you can't do it by yourself anymore. This isn't, maybe 30 years ago, that was the style and the system. But I think now you got to have strong assistants and guys you can rely on. In terms of baseball, without Rit Lacomas at Stanford High, no way I'm a varsity baseball coach. At least not, at 38 years old. It would have probably took me 5-10 more years. Nobody prepares like Rit. Rit's meticulous in his preparation. Rit runs great practices. And I learned a lot from just his experience. And he brought me into Stanford High to be an assistant. So, I work with him in his summer camp with the little kids. And, I always tell him I talk to Rick quite a bit. We're good friends. And I always say, Rick, without you, I wouldn't be in this situation. And I'm just thankful. And, Rick always gives me credit back, but I can't thank Rick enough. And then, Steve Bucket, who's another new coach like me, I was Steve's pitching coach on JV at Stanford High. So I learned a ton from Steve too. I learned, the thing that sticks out with Steve, all these coaches have given me a little something, but Steve helped me realize that you got to be calm, right? You can't get too caught in the moment, and you're not going to meet much better guys than Coach Bucket. He's just a even, steady keel guy. He's a great coach. He has great rapport with his players, and you're never going to see him get too high or low, and I try to mimic that. When I'm coaching, I try to show my players that, we're going to have adversity. We're going to have good times and bad times, but we need to kind of stay steady. And that's tough when you're coaching high school kids. There's a lot of energy there and, kids with a lot of fire. But, that and Anthony Bloss and New Canaan, I know I'm rambling here, but these are all guys that has such a big impact on me. Anthony, you're not going to meet a nicer guy than Anthony. And what he's done in New Canaan, and he's turning that program around back into a contender with Mike Tisha as his assistant. I coached with Mike under Danny Melzer for basketball, learned a lot from him too. At basketball, I had to coach all three levels. I was the assistant freshman, assistant JV, assistant varsity. I did scouting. I did everything. So these guys have all had a huge impact. Tim Daly in Stanford Legion over the summer. He's the Brunswick pitching coach. Jeff Lambert, who did a year in New Canaan, was a great guy. So you wrap all that up, and all the things I learned from them, it has had the impact it's had on me to be able to say, these are the things I'm going to need to do to be successful one day if I get my opportunity. So I'm thankful to all those guys. They've all been great mentors to me, and I can't thank them enough.
Okay, all good guys, all good young coaches that you named there. So no surprise there, and it's kind of been interesting how they train you in Stanford, and then they send you off to New Canaan, and and then between you, Danny, Tish, it's pretty funny now. You never would have thought that, but
my luck of coaching, like basketball in particular, imagine coaching with John Daly and Danny Melzer. You're talking about two of the top coaches.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The amount I learned from those guys, it's invaluable. And not being necessarily a big basketball guy, it was like training on the run, but I felt like I left there being like, I miss basketball a lot. It's just very tough to be the head coach in one sport and try to do another sport. It's very difficult. So I needed to put all my time and energy into one, but I missed basketball season so much this year, and I was so proud of the way the guys competed. And, it was them and Richfield there at the end, and, Richfield so well coached and prepared. We know that. So I felt bad. That was a great group of seniors too. So.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Your first season off and running, and you're sitting here at 9-2 and very much in the thick of the race. So a lot of that has to do with the talent on the team, and a lot of that has to do with the coaching being done from the dugout. So Adrian is someone who covered you, like I said, going back to a player and remember you well. Congratulations on the great start. Continued success, get a little rest, and don't be surprised if Phil has safety squeeze defense in Monday, tomorrow afternoon for you. But
yeah, that might be a little tough tomorrow, and it could be that kind of game, where it's a tight game at the end. I want to thank you for everything. I just want to say one last quick thing. I just want to thank all my coaches, Pat Murphy, Sean Mayo, Joe Urbano, and then at the JV level, I have Aiden Gaffney, freshman level, Alex Santos. Great staff. And as a coach, I'm going to tell you, any success that you attribute has got to be attributed to the guys you have around you. And without those guys and their preparation and their dedication, I don't think we'd be in this spot right now and be as successful as we are. So I can't thank those guys enough. And Dave, I've said this to you, almost every time we talk, I can't thank you enough for all your coverage for our boys. And, the boys work hard, and it's nice to see that there's still people out there who want to promote high school sports in this area and give these kids a platform, because they work harder than ever. I think back to when I played, it was not like this. So we really appreciate your support and your coverage and your continued, support of everything. So thanks again. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Adrian. I appreciate that, and continued success. That's my guest, Adrian Arango, new Greenwich baseball coach. I don't know if we'll call him new midway through the season, but the Cardinals are 9-2. Watch out. We'll be back after this. Again, I want to thank Adrian Arango for taking the time. And Ian, what about mention Anthony Bloss at New Canaan? You going to get over to see the Rams at all this week? What's on your schedule?
Well, we definitely will, Dave. We got a game on Wednesday up against Darien. New Canaan, Darien, always fun to see, although the Blue Waves struggling a little bit on the diamond this year. That game on Wednesday. And then on Friday, New Canaan and Coach Bloss have senior night. They're matched up against a pretty good team,
Wilton.
too, in Wilton. Yes.
Wilton's that's another game on my radar for Friday.
So, yep, baseball Wednesday against Darien and Friday against Wilton. And then we also got some lacrosse games. We got Tuesday, girls lacrosse versus St. Joe's. And then on Saturday, a doubleheader. Glastonbury comes to town to play both the guys and the girls. So we will be busy on Saturday. So make sure you like and subscribe to NCTV 78. And can't wait to see an interview with Adrian Arango. I know it just played. He's a superstar, really good guy, and former New Canaan assistant. I know him well.
Math teacher, have you had him in class?
I did not.
Okay, I wanted to get the lowdown on him academically, but
He's a smart guy. I don't know about the textbook, but he's a terrific coach.
nah, he's a good guy. I know him well, and he's the baseball coaches are in the FCIAC. Every one of them are. It's just a good crop of coaches. So anyhow, well, that's NC 78. We're going to wrap the show up here, so a bunch of thank yous again to Ian Nicholas. Thanks a lot for joining me, as always, making the trip here to Westport. I want to thank everybody here at Verso Studios, and in particular, our sound editor, engineer, the one who makes us sound great, Travis Bell. I want to thank Adrian Arango again for taking the time, and want to remind you all that you can subscribe to the Ruden Report podcast on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're everywhere. Hit us up with a good review. We appreciate it. I want to remind you all that the views expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the views of Verso Studios or the Westport Library. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you again next week.